Hello, Dr. Jeff here with the team,
Howdy.
Timothy and Jim. We are continuing to push forward into this really superficial, almost plastic topic of why are we here? This has been really exciting to me the last couple of weeks of just everything I'm listening to, conversations I'm having, discussions I'm involved with in my practice, and of course the healing work that I'm doing, of trying to just be a repository for why are we here, and trying to come at this from a fresh perspective, or at least new for me. Again, not claiming to know the answer, but just we're playing with the question. We're really just playing with the question, and it's unlike my intro of plastic and superficial. It's pretty darn deep. I don't really know that there are too many more deep questions than you could try to play around with. But this, in attempting to talk about it and discuss it, the idea that we had in wanting to share our dialogue with everyone is that there would be more meaning and purpose in people's lives by just being more conscious and bringing this question into the forefront of your mind in your daily activities, not in a judgmental way by any means, simply as a way of looking at, is this the best use of my time, since we all only have 168 hours a week, and it's the one unrenewable resource that all of us have or don't have, more time. Haven't learned how to buy that yet or make more of it.
And about 650,000 hours in our lifetime.
Oh, that's interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah, to quantify the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
We make up money, we can make up time. We'll make up bit time. There you go.
So pushing into this question, why are we here? It's almost difficult to even get where do you even try to start playing around with that thing? So if we look at maybe trying to set some bookends from one end of, well, how do you even know we're here? There's one way to start this is this even real? Is it a big video game in the sky? Is it a hologram? Is it some kind of Matrix thing? Is it Horton Hears a Who? So I don't think that's the purpose of this discussion, to try to define, is this even real? But our experience is our experience. I think we could all agree on that. We do seem to be having an experience here. And so what would the nature be of the experience? For what purpose? And some people are cool with this notion that there doesn't even have to be a purpose. It's some amoeba that came from a bacteria, that came from a hurling piece of rock from outer space that happened to hit this planet at the right time in the right conditions, and here we are a few million years later or whatever, and having this conversation. And at the end of the ride, there's nothing, and this doesn't mean anything. And there, we have names for that type of belief system, whether it's agnostic or atheist. And I'm not here to debate the differences between the two of those. But I think that from that bookend, that end of the discussion, for me, and me alone, is easily defeatable. If you really believe that, then you really wouldn't be listening to this podcast right now. So we're not even really going to kind of go after that particular audience, because even more so, there would be no point in following rules or having any social appreciations or anything else, because if this life did not matter beyond this life, then it wouldn't matter whether you lived another day or another year or 10 years or whatever.
We're kind of going over some big generalizations.
Yeah. It's like, how do you even start to eat this elephant?
Yeah.
And let's set the other end of the book, or the other bookend,
yeah.
And then we'll jump in as a team and try to push into this. So the other end of it doesn't matter, and you can do whatever you want, and there is no purpose, it's just random. The other end of that would be some divine, intelligent design, purposeful plan, and then everything in between. So for me, those are the bookends. do you guys want to expand that, or do you want to work with that as the bookends of what we're going to push into?
Sure. I mean, I have some thoughts about it. I'm not sure where that lands in the bookend, but I definitely have some thoughts about it.
Yeah, me too. And on one of the bookends, talking about, because if we indeed did come from bacteria, like we did, that there's no purpose in, if there's not some foreign or superficial agency in play, then somehow it's not going to make any sense that, we're just this advanced conglomerations of bacteria that are sourcing through these new parts of our brain that are allowing us to think and do and be. I think it's possible that we could come from a very happenstantial beginning, and but I think with that, these complex lives and these complex ideas of how we can look at life, we can discover meaning, even if it didn't necessarily come from something else, somewhere else that's taking care of, what's next for our evolution. So I agree with the bookend idea, but I don't think that it has to be a bookend where there's nothing really matters, because I understand that that's even further down on the extreme, but I'd like to postulate that we have evolved, and we know that we've evolved, and what is it that we want to do with this incredible capacity that we have to change our planet, to reach ourselves into space, and to understand ourselves on a subatomic level, on a philosophical level, on a spiritual level, and all these things. I think it's fascinating, but I don't need the idea of something having a hand in designing this for it to mean something to me. But I'm more on that end of the bookend than the other. What were you gonna jump in on?
Before you go to
Yeah.
Jim, what I got out of what you shared,
Okay.
two powerful words, meaning and understanding.
Right.
So if we could take meaning and understanding and put those under the heading of why are we here, those would be two things that we might say are important, that we're here to have some meaning and some understanding.
Yeah. Absolutely.
As a place to start?
Absolutely.
Okay. Sorry, Jim.
Oh no, it's great. It's all good.
If I didn't do that then, I would have forgotten.
Yeah, that's the whole purpose of the format, is to dialogue. For me, I don't see the streams as separate. So, and what I mean by that is that there is evolution, which is one aspect of what's taking place on the planet. The human species, the human being, the evolution from that, what was it, from the one cell
bacteria?
to the multicell to the whatever.
Yeah.
To me and for me in my own process of evolution, I wrote about this in my book, is that to me that this is all the evolution of God understanding and experiencing itself, God, the universe, however you want to see that ultimate, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I call it God because it's easy and I like it and it feels good. But I also don't have necessarily all of the entrapment of that construct with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't associate God with religion. I associate God with ultimate creation, with creation. So for me, it is being a spark of that what animates my being is that spark. And there is an evolution that's occurring around the evolution of that spark. So as I embrace that spark, as that spark grows inside of me, as it expands within me and within my energy system, so too does the physical process evolve through that. So, and I say that because there are so many things that indicate that with the change of consciousness is change of physiology. That you can, through science, you can see that when someone's consciousness shifts, it physically alters their physical body. It changes the complexion of their body.
It's empirical. You can measure it.
Right.
Yeah.
It changes what parts of the brain are used, how much of the brain is used, how much of the brain is engaged. So for me, there is kind of this concurrent evolution going on where there is a stimulation through that spark that creates a desire to grow, creates a desire to change or to morph or to evolve. And through that evolution, you begin to, again, take on more of that because you begin to see the connections to all things as you evolve. So, as it talks about, I think in Eastern, particularly in Eastern religion, or in Eastern spirituality, is that the idea that we're all connected, that we're all one. I think it's through that process that as you become conscious of that spark and you engage that spark and it begins to transform your physical world, you begin to see the connection to the trees and the plants and the flowers and the birds and the dogs and the cats and the animals, and you start to feel that interconnectedness and you see it. And that's more of the spark coming to life that's being reflected through the experience that you're having in the world. I love the idea of, and maybe that's all it is an idea, but I love the idea of the ultimate creator creating ways to observe and experience itself in a new way, because that's what we do on the planet every day. We seek new ways to explore who we are and what we are and how we feel and why we do what we do and why we feel what we feel and why we think what we think and why we act the way we act. And all of that is the same energy, just macrocosm, microcosm, or vice versa, whichever way you want to go.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense, but for, let's say I just landed here and I'm just trying to get a sense of, and I'm just using logic and reason, critical thinking skills. What evidence do we have of a divine creator? I know you said you like to think that, but I mean, is it, what evidence? Yeah.
The unerring perfection that exists everywhere, that you can, the idea that you can have an idea, have a thought, have an inspiration, and then encounter in your physical world something that exemplifies or speaks to or elevates that idea or thought or process. The depth of the connectedness, I think, speaks to that. There has, to me, if it was not in some way a larger creative energy force, then there would be no purpose. There would be no, it would be completely random, and I don't experience anything as random, ever. So that idea that there isn't something contributing, and I don't see it as a manipulation. I don't see it as this creator who's doing this thing I see it as an expression. I see it as creation. It's just a never-ending field of creation. And I mean, from the planet all the way down to the smallest molecules and beyond, it's all in a form of evolution, all in a process of coming into itself and coming to a relationship with itself, with its environment, with whatever's going on around. So
could it be 0-point field? And I know that there's implications to what that means, but just this, could it just be that there's an energy that is responding to what we come up with? But and I could get on board with that all day long, because I think that's speaking, that covers most of what you're describing, and I feel that too. This notion of a creator, though, to me, can be I'd like to. Can you lean a little bit more into how you get to that from? And I'm fine with knowing that there are things that we can measure that respond to the nature of our intention, right? But trying to source the source on that, I think, is I think it's an exercise in futility. At least it has been for me, and I'm wide open to suggestion. But I agree with all that you're saying about the way that energy can align itself, and there's the ways that things can pop up at just the right time, and all the serendipity in life, and it's exciting, and it's just a little mind blowing at times. But I would be interested in knowing if you have access to helping me understand how do we know that's a creator, and how is it not just an energy that reflects what's going on with our intention? Now,
I don't see them as different.
okay.
I wouldn't call those two things differently.
So how is it creating?
So probably...
How does it create? If it's not, would it be creating if we weren't here? Or is it just the essence of our beingness that's creating this exchange with this energy? But I mean,
Well, that thought by its very nature is limiting. In so much as it's taking everything and reducing it to this small construct. So, meaning there's so much beyond this human experience, which is the Earth's experience, the planet's experience, the other planet's experience, the sun's experience, this universe's experience, what's beyond this universe's experience. There's at least as far as we understand it, I think your idea and how you're presenting it as a created energy, I think is very powerful in that it doesn't necessarily have a person attached to it. It doesn't have a person attached to it.
And does it have a consciousness? Because if I think of a creator, and maybe we could just talk about that. What is a creator?
I think we provide that. I think that's part of what we do.
So we're that source of animation. We're the creators, and there's a reciprocity with whatever that energy is that boosts it up and begins to create, or is there something outside of us? Because whenever I hear there's a divine creator, I think of something I hear, and I could be off on this, or just misinformed, but I think of something separate that is kind of looking out and making choices, decisions. It's doing its own creating without us. Mm-hmm. And you think that there's something that's working that doesn't have anything to do with us, that's creating. So like you're talking about like the sun.
Yeah, there's frogs, there's trees, there's birds.
Yeah.
There's all different forms.
we know what forms celestial bodies. We know that it's gravity. So is gravity in its essence a divine creative force?
Doesn't gravity provide the framework for the time and space in which we exist?
Yeah.
So how would that playpen have been...
I'm enjoying the hell out of this, by the way.
How would that playpen have been created if not by some energy or force that let me backtrack a minute. So, I wrote about this part too.
How lovely.
This is kind of interesting. I lost my train there a second. Go back. Where were we?
We were talking about, you had mentioned how each body and each entity has its own creative force, and so I was asking you about gravity being a creative.
The time and space.
And we don't even know if gravity exists. That's an assumption. In Tellinger's work, he's saying, no, it's electrical forces, it's electromagnetism.
Beautiful.
That we've just called that gravity because we couldn't.
Right.
Well, you guys have seen, I'm assuming you've seen the video where they did the experiment with the bowling ball and the feathers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was that one you sent?
I don't think so.
No,
I saw that
I
a long
haven't
time
seen
ago.
it.
So they did this, they were doing this experiment. They wanted to see if you drop a bowling ball and feathers from the same altitude that they would come to the ground at the same time. Well, they did it, and of course that didn't happen. But when they created a vacuum and put the bowling ball and the feathers in the vacuum and did them, they both came down at the same rate and landed at the same time. So the idea that there is a construct called time and space that doesn't exist without outside the atmosphere of this planet, as far as we know, right? So somehow a playpen has been created for the life that we experience to unfold. So to me, there had to be some force of energy, some force of focus that said that had a desire, that had, and maybe part of it is our language, because there's a limitation to how far we can take language, but I'm calling it desire. I'm calling it, there was God's desire to experience itself from other perspective, or from, or simply to experience itself with no other qualification. It was creation, creation, creation. So this is really
I think
cool,
that's beautiful, but
where does it go from here?
to me, it's a bit of a leap to go from there's this energy that's responding to our intention to there had to be, and I get that, but I don't understand. I guess it's just difficult for me to get to a place where I think that something else had an intention or a focus, like you said, that kick-started everything. And I think that's what the mystery is that that's what we're talking about. We don't really know, back to the other incantations of what we were talking about, where do we come from? We don't really know about this. We don't know. It's nice to think about something else having a focus and a desire, you say. How do we know what the universal energy of the cosmos, how do we know it had a desire? To me, that's a leap. And I think it's beautiful. I love it. It's romantic, but I don't...
Where's the leap? Define what you're calling the leap.
How do we know that energy that we can't explain had a particular desire? You use the word desire and focus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, based on what we know and can observe in this awesome ride, what is it? What is that rub? Like, what is this energy has a focus and a desire. Mm-hmm. To me, that starts to get into faith, mm-hmm. rather than just observation.
Are you equating faith with religion?
Not necessarily.
So what's wrong with the idea of faith?
There's not anything wrong. It's just not very scientific. It doesn't really explain the cosmos. There's not a lot of cosmologists relying on faith to explain.
Well, and I would say to you that from my perspective, that there is no one or the other. There is no evolution and creation. It is a concurrent process. It is not separate. It is not individual. It is not.
Whose account
us
of
or
creation?
them. It's the same with the idea of faith versus science. Science is man's creation of a way to understand the universe in which he lives, which is awesome. And it has provided a lot of interesting information, some of it good, a lot of it horse shit, but a lot of it good.
Any examples of the horse shit?
Not right off the top of my head.
Well, Einstein's theory of relativity is horseshit.
Yeah.
Not entirely.
There are some assumptions that, just like when you tossed out the word gravity,
yeah,
most everybody that heard that tonight thought they knew what gravity was,
right.
and that we could all agree that it exists. But the reality is we really can't know anything, and that's the disturbing part.
Right.
And that's primarily in my training, in my background, what I would consider myself to be a behavioral scientist. I'm what I call somebody who wants to know something.
Yeah.
And to know it, for me, was safer to know it with the left brain that can measure and repeat and do the scientific approach. To discount the knowing in the right side was the experiential side. That's where I've landed now as, for me, that's all I can know is my experience. And that everything else that I thought I knew with empirical measures and data, I got to let that go because they're all based on assumptions that cannot be proven. And just like the round earth versus flat earth, you cannot prove either one of them, especially to somebody who doesn't want to have an open debate about it with you. And so it's like, okay.
On another time, at another time, I'd like to explore that because I'm new to that topic, and it's really difficult for me to.
It's difficult for all of us. I mean, I'm not saying it tongue in cheek, like,
right.
but for me, it doesn't change my experience.
Right.
It really doesn't. I take off in an airplane and I get to where I'm going. It doesn't matter if I went around or I went straight across. I still get to where I'm going. It's just kind of humorous that we think it's really important to, like, and that's really where we get sidetracked of, did the glove fit? We all know who was guilty, right? And all I have to do is say, did the glove fit? And everybody knows what I'm talking about. And we laugh about it because it's like that made the difference as to whether the guy walked or not. And it's silly. Yeah. Anyway, so if we go back to the experience of, could we agree, and we've played with this in previous discussions, that whatever my experience is, you can't tell me that it wasn't my experience.
Right.
You just can't.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you your experience wasn't your experience. And just because we can't agree on whether those green spiders on the wall are really there or not, my experience is just as valid as anyone else's. It's scary to people when people have those kinds of experiences and they can't be measured and they can't be duplicated.
David Koresh.
And then we want to call those people certain names and get them away from society because what we don't understand, we become afraid of. But in this discussion, there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of.
Well, I want to interject, if I could, because the thing that's so interesting to me in this conversation, particularly what he just said, he came from that empirical place. Study it, learn it, right? I'm completely the opposite. So my experience is I go through my life and I mean, I read books and I understand things and I learn things, but I don't come from the background of science. I come more from a background of spirituality and probably would have to say religion to start with, but didn't last very long. But my point is that as I have moved through my life, I've had some incredibly wonderful and profound experiences and continue to have them without any understanding of the context of them. And what happens is that I'll have an experience, it will be a completely visceral, profound experience that I can talk about and give language to, and then within 2 or 3 days of that experience, someone will show up who will give me the story of, oh yeah, so-and-so wrote the book about that, blah, 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 book, and I'm like, excuse me?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, there's a book, it's called blah, blah, and it talks all about that.
And what are the chances?
Seriously?
Yeah.
And then if I go look at the book, it's everything I just experienced, and I'm going, wait a second. It's happened so many times that I just go, yeah, this is awesome. Exactly. I like this because I'm not needing to prove anything. I'm experiencing it and then going, somebody else has been here. Somebody else has been at this doorstep.
And I'm not in a space where, first of all, that's happened to me innumerable times, especially when I'm dialed in and taking full inventory of my experience and being an advocate for myself and doing all the self-care things that I could be doing, quieting the mind and meditation and yoga and things like that. It's extraordinary what manifests from there. So I'm digging the mystery that that stuff occurs. But for me to go from just observing that is my experience, to a claim that there's a creator that must have done it, that's the leap for me. And
why don't we just say that that's our experience? It's my experience that fits better for me.
That there's
like
a creator.
It does for Jim.
Okay.
And that if for your experience right now, we'll work on you, but you're not there yet.
And I want to clarify language.
I'm teasing, by the way. That was definitely teasing,
language
Timothy.
is really important to me, and your choice of words right then that, I wish you could repeat that there is a creator who did that, or something, was the language.
There was a couple times when you said there's got to be this, there's got to be X, there's got to be, we're solving for X, there's got to be a creator that did it. And I'm saying that I'm okay just realizing, like, whoa, look at all these happenstantial things that happened because I was tuned into this particular frequency in my life, and how on earth did all these people that just absolutely knew where I was, out of all the things I could be involved with, these people showed up. And like, I love that, I dig that, I'm in that almost every day. But the idea that there's a creator, there's got to be a creator, is the only point of contention that not contention necessarily, but I just wanted a little more, I wanted to understand that more, because I find that maybe I am missing something, but I'm always looking for, I'm trying to keep myself open and see what I can discover, but I feel a lot of the same things that you do. I'm not thinking that it's got to be a divine creator that was there in order for me to experience this, and I'm open, and maybe as we continue to evolve the conversation, I can get some more feathers in my hat in that. Yeah.
So I have a curious question.
Yeah.
That and maybe you both might want to dive into this one. So I found that there is a question that can be asked that stimulates all kinds of stuff. Some of it is some of it is obvious, but a lot of it goes even deeper. But what would you consider to be your relationship with God? How would you define your relationship?
And for me, that would be with the great mystery of the cosmos, the universal intelligence, this field that we're talking about that responds. I mean, I think it's a lot of, it feels like I have a lot of respect for that, and I spend a lot of time channeling the goodness of what's greater than me, because there's no way I could see the amount of clients that I have for as long as I have and still maintain vibrancy if I was relying on my own resources, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm tapping into some kind of what I get out of yoga, what I get out of a run, what I get out of rock climb, or river raft, or whatever. My connection with nature is harnessing that energy into something very direct. And so to me, it's just this wonderment and this gorgeous experience of awe when I can just realize that I can be part of this incredible mighty river that's flowing, or I can jack things up with my ego and resist it, and have a lot of fragmentation and things like that. So whenever I think of God, it's a very different conversation than when I used to think about God. What I was taught about God, what our demographics indoctrinate about God is very different today. So to me, I don't really like that word so much, because I think it's been used, and I think a lot of people have lost their lives in the name of what they thought it was, and I just feel like it's been used so much. I think that for me, it's the most spiritual experiences that I've had have just been with the cosmos, and just as Rumi says, God is in the silence and all else is a poor translation. So to me, my relationship with God is doing all I can to remain as still and as silent as I possibly can be, and just be a clean vessel for whatever energy is happening that's beautiful and good in this space-time continuum that can show up for me and the people that I'm treating. So, but I don't have like when I go to meditate, I'm not trying to crawl in the lap of something. I'm not trying to
I agree.
It's just silence and observation, and it's so freaking beautiful what happens when I get clean in my channel and I just open up and it's all like it's brand new. It's all psychedelic and it's all gratitude. So whatever God, that word or that concept is just, for me, it's about compassion. It's about curiosity and gratitude. So that would be my...
Did you have any thoughts you wanted to add on that?
Seems like more and more people are calling that source than God.
Yeah.
Source or universal mind. I like that. And I find... Oh, sorry. Go.
I'm good.
No, I like... And it reminded me that so much of, especially lately, this idea that the universal mind idea. I mean, I still like source. I like God. I don't really care about whatever you want to call it. But,
Sure.
But the idea of universal mind is intriguing because that's all about energy,
Right.
and frequency and vibration, and more that seems to be what our reality is driven on.
Mm.
It's all frequency and vibration, and
Sure.
and so what if that indeed, that idea of universal mind is still a source, it's still something coming from somewhere, whether it's however it's creating or however it's, but seeing that happening in real time, where those frequencies and vibrations really, it's less attached to the minutia of what we experience. You know, I don't know if I'm making sense with this, that as the illusions fall away of all the different constructs that are built out there that really are just nonsense or aren't real or are all man constructed, that as they fall away, what's left is frequency and vibration and energy.
Yeah.
And when then you think about in terms of frequency, energy, and vibration, then where is all of that sourcing from?
Yeah.
And that's got to be, to me, that's God, that's universal mind, that's source, that's whatever. There's something creating that vibration somehow, some way, some form. I think for me, the idea of God keeps it no, I don't know if it keeps it anything, actually. It just, it personalizes it for me. There's nothing to do with what it does it look like something, or does it's a feeling, it's an energy, it's an experience, and
I'm getting that it's a relationship.
it's a relationship.
Yeah, and maybe we could add that into the list of words now.
Beautiful.
So we've got 3 words: relationship, meaning, and understanding as reasons, part of the reasons why we're here.
Good eye,
Yeah.
Kimo-san.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to double down on Jim's thought of, you know, the bacteria had to come from something, somewhere, and you've used the word energy several times, and the energy, I don't know, had sex with itself and made itself, or I don't know, how does that all work? It's beyond, certainly I have no ability to, in an educated fashion, discuss that concept. So I guess we're making some assumptions that we're having this experience, and that's really about, I think, all we can assume, is that we don't know what the source is, what its intentions are, but we are having this experience to whatever degree it seems real to us.
Do you feel that the source has an intention?
For me, yes, only because it's my training and my background that I need for there to be a reason to be going through this experience, because it's hard.
Yeah.
For me, it's hard.
Yeah.
And I create that. I go out of my way to make sure my day is full, and there's a challenge for me to face. And
What's most difficult, do you think? How would you quantify the difficulty of this experience?
Oh, that's a great question. Perhaps for me, the battle between self and other. How much focus am I going to be on me?
Sure.
And how much am I going to support and serve others?
Mm-hmm. But you have a tremendous amount of peace and a little glimmer in your eye when you speak about it. So I'm not getting the struggle with that. Like what? Give me another.
Well, like more details of that?
Well, yeah. Like what is hard? I mean, yes, it sucks to watch our parents get old and to say goodbye to things that we love. And I mean, like, yeah. But tell me. I'm just curious. Like, what? Just on a raw level, what's difficult about it?
I could probably take off tomorrow and just walk away from everything and go have a grand experience and completely walk away from these responsibilities that I think I've created.
Okay.
And that at times seem like chains or ropes or tethers in some way. Mm-hmm. And the expectations.
So responsibility and expectation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to honor those, and because of how I have shown up, seems to establish a legacy of the continued march in that pace and fervor or whatever. And,
sure.
But I've created it all myself, and once it's created, it's like now I got to sustain it, and that's a struggle. That's a tough struggle. There's a bunch of folks my age that are contemplating retirement and being done with the rat race and everything and wanting to just sit on their boats and fish all day long. And for me, that would be insanely boring. I can do that for about a week, but then it's like, okay, I need something that has more meaning.
Yeah.
I can't just do this. I have no idea if I got anywhere close to answering your question.
Well, it didn't translate from hard to boredom. You jumped tracks right in the middle and went from answering the question, which was about what's hard, to I don't want to be bored, which is why I make it hard, which is kind of interesting, actually. You connect the dots. So that's an interesting paradigm, interesting perception of how you create your experience.
Yeah.
And I get in trouble sometimes for really listening to what people are saying. And I know that some people, a lot of times what happens is, I'm not saying this is an instance of this, but a lot of times what will happen is that people will say things, and I'll repeat exactly what they just said back to them. And they're like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. You know what I'm saying. I'm like, well... I'm actually listening to what you're saying, and then they get frustrated that I'm not, just filling in the blanks for them, and that's someone else's. I'm listening to what people say, so I kind of lost a little bit of what was hard there, and
maybe we should add responsibility to the list.
Do you want me to grab a?
Well, but once we go beyond my 5 fingers,
hey,
I got some toes. I got some toes.
Sorry, Timothy, finish that thought, please.
Hang on one second.
That's funny.
When I was going through boot camp, I specifically chose the Marine Corps because they had F-4 Phantoms that I could fly. That's what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. But so did the Navy. But I didn't want to fly off of a ship. I wanted to fly off of land more than a ship. And for some reason, from the little I knew at the wise age of 17, not much, I was more interested in being a Marine than being a sailor. It was more challenging. You heard slogans like the few and the proud. There's just these slogans that you operate from. So I didn't want to go the easy way. And a lot of people said, hey, if you want to fly jets, go in the Air Force. I mean, they wear these pretty blue uniforms and they live in these apartment style living. It's a nice life. They play golf every day. I'm like, nah, I want to live in the dirt. I want it to be hard. Right. And I want to have a challenge. So that's just how I showed up. That's my personality, that if I'm going to do something, it's going to be the hardest way to do it. And for me, the reward at the end is I look back and go, I did it.
Yeah.
I met the challenge. I made a big challenge for myself, and I rose to it and figured out a way to scratch through it.
And the character building of picking yourself up and getting that stuff done, the hardest.
I think that does build character.
Yeah.
It isn't the most financially sound thing to do. The guys that did join the Air Force are flying the friendly skies now, and they probably are retiring, playing golf every day, and sitting on their boats fishing. But for me, that is not the life I want. I don't want that life. Clearly, I don't want that life. So when I say it's hard, that's not for me a bad thing. Hard is actually a good thing, and but it is a struggle, but that to me is what brings out my whatever that is. I'm gonna go get it, and if it isn't hard, Jeff's not interested in it. That's why we picked these really super easy questions, right? Like, where did we come from? Why are we here? And where are we going?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, as a shift in paradigm, I'm hearing hard, and I'm also hearing engaged, and wondering what the difference in the choice of words would be if you just simply said, I like things that fully engage me at every level. Because it takes a whole lot of shit out of the equation that you don't need.
Yeah.
If it's not hard, because if it's hard, then it's got to have edges. It's got to have things that are potentially insurmountable, and and go Indiana Jones. I mean, that which is awesome. But is it necessary? And are you finding in the transition that you spoke of a little while ago from that very cerebral science place to that more receiving place, are you finding that shifting as well? Are you finding less of the hardness and just the engagement is what satisfies? I'm curious.
I like the idea of dumping hard and just going with fully engaged. And then whatever it takes for me to be fully engaged, those are the variables that will show up and will keep me engaged. Yeah,
keep you
good.
Satisfied, because I think ultimately that's what we strive for.
So that's probably also a key word to add to the list, some level of satisfaction in life, whether that's I went to church every Sunday, I brought flowers to my mom's grave, there's something that people are doing, no matter how big or small, I watched Wapner at 3:05 every day. I didn't miss one. Some level of satisfaction.
Yeah, wow. Let's dust that one off. Smell some cobwebs burning. Thanks for clarifying. And that was nice insight there, Jim.
Can I keep going with this boot camp mentality thing? Because I use it at least once a week. Because you're asking me, and I don't remember the question, but I remember there was a word that I was going to use that I didn't use, the word of programmatic. So there's like a program.
Okay.
For me, there's a program that we're here to go through and to experience. And to become a Marine, you had to go through all of these things, to wear the uniform, to be able to go and interact with other Marines, to be able to do similar things together as a team. And there's no way, you can't buy it, you can't have somebody else do it for you. You got to do it.
Yeah.
And when you do it, on graduation day, there's this tremendous pride experience. I'm a Marine, I did this. Same thing with getting winged at flight school and all these, it's a graduation thing. I met the challenge, I rose to the occasion. And to me, life is like that. That's just a more structured, programmatic thing. But we do that with going through high school and getting a driver's license and falling in love and falling out of love and getting in a fight or whatever. These are all these things that we do, some of which are intentionally engaging, very engaging. They require your full attention, your full focus, maybe even at a life and death level of engagement. And in doing so, for me, that's what gives me the sense of being alive. That's probably another one that would go on the list. A sense of truly being alive. And we can't experience that without getting slapped around. We could probably reframe that one too. Because getting slapped around is a way of being engaged, right?
Another form of engagement, yes.
But I share with people that just like some generals and colonels got together and said, okay, boot camp is 13 weeks, and this on day 1 there's a training day, and on 2 we're doing this, and you got to do that one before you can do this one, and then you create a final product. And at the end of this journey, it would seem that there's things we've experienced, that there's a final product. And of course, it isn't all the same. And there's so many, there's the Navy, the Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and every other military branch on the planet, and even the non-military organizations that have a program. But at some level, a kindergarten has a program. There's a program really kind of behind everything to do what you do. There was training that you went through that was a program. Higher Brain Living had a program. You might take what you're doing and make a program out of it someday. So we seem to have this inherent thing about I got to go through this program, and there's stuff I got to learn, things I have to experience. Then I can be who I am or do what I'm going to do. And my mentors tell me it takes more than one lifetime to learn it all. And that's what we got to keep coming back for. And sometimes take the same lesson, to have the same engagement.
Right?
I play a lot with the difference between have to and get to.
Yeah. I love that. That's a much better way of looking at it.
And it's just, I find that when I have my clients repeat the same thing back to me, they're like, oh, I have to. And then they look completely different when they say, I get to.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Tom Sawyer painting the fence. This arduous chore on a beautiful day, and he manages to coerce all the other kids to help him out, and he made it feel like it was a privilege to get to play in this way, and next thing you know, they knock it out and they get to go do what they want. But it's a get to.
Mm-hmm.
Those little tackings, man. Those
Yeah.
little tackings can make such a big difference in the enjoyment of the here and now.
Yeah.
And another word choice possibility, changing program for structure. That we desire structure in order to understand our experience. So we constructed time and space and gravity and things that help us better to define what we're trying to understand.
Sure.
So we each in our own organic process, your organic process was, I need structure. I desire structure. Structure gives me meaning. Structure gives me understanding. I have a similar desire in structure, but over time that has become less important. I still desire structure because it helps me to comprehend things better, but I don't have. That's true. I have to think about that a second. The idea of structure as a means to focus energy, concentrated energy, in a way of coming to deeper understanding of self. Because everything you've done, everything we've all done, has been that from the beginning. I mean, even as a child, we had immense ability to focus and direct our focus in a way. And what we didn't have was structure. So what we learned in this environment was how to be structured. And some of us maybe felt safer within structure versus without structure.
Mm-hmm.
To me, your personality is less structured. So it doesn't seem like you would require the same type of structure. It's different. Your structure is mountains and trees and being engaged with the earth, and that provides you a structure so that your energy expands, so that your energy opens and you're ready for more. For you, it was that intense structure that drove you deep into your experience in a way that allowed you to, and continues to allow. And I mean, for me, I think it's a mix. I think there's for a large part of my experience, was very much about, this is how it is, this is the way we do it, this is the, and over time that began to break down, and as that softens, I think the idea of structure for me is trying to be redefined, because I'm not, because now it's gone beyond what's going on here to what's going on here. You're like, wow, okay, so how do you balance? How do you balance between hither and yon in a way that, how do you create structure? Well, there isn't. Is there? I don't know. And maybe God's my way of providing structure for myself.
And I think that's where the various spiritual practices have come in. Is trying to map that, trying to find that connection. And yeah.
No.
Oh.
I really like that a lot. And going back to that universal intelligence source idea, and the idea that the idea of God provides a structure for that energy source. It provides a structure that I can, at least at this stage, it gives my human brain the ability to have a playpen. But to me, the idea of God as the structure takes it out of all of the trained stuff we do from the beginning. Does that make sense? Meaning, you were talking about earlier about, as kids and those constructs and ideas and the way we're supposed to be in the world, that at some point that shifts, at some point that changes, because there isn't a sense of satisfaction in that anymore. We're not satisfied with the structures that exist here, because they're not fulfilling in the way that we look for, that we seek fulfillment. So for me, the structure of God gives me somewhere much greater to pursue, something that satisfies me. And it satisfies me deeply.
So coming back at you with the same question, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Did you ask me what is my relationship with God?
Huh?
Okay. What is your relationship with God? Tell me.
For me, my relationship with God has always been, as long as I can remember, a connection. A connection always to something I could rely on, something I could go to, an energy that I could always talk to and communicate with, and always communicated with me.
Yeah.
And it's a relationship for me. It's a very deep and powerful relationship that guides much of what I do. Maybe not everything, because every now and again the ego and the human part of me just wants to do some fucked up shit. and my connection doesn't change because of that. And so I think for me the strongest word is the connection. It gives me and fills me with that reality of connection all the time. I don't see it as a savior or but as someone who, or something that completely gets me, and I don't ever have to justify that. I just it's a connection that I have to come back to that word again. Connection. If I ever feel disconnected, then I know I'm in trouble. Then I know I have to stop. Whatever I'm doing, big time, stop and go, ooh, time out.
Disconnected from your idea of God, is that what you mean?
Yeah, disconnected from source, or disconnected from that, from the feeling that I am always taken care of. From the feeling that I am safe, from the feeling that I am loved, from the feeling that and that for me is where trust and faith come in. There's that. Thus far, in 53 years, I've not had any experience that I would ever say was godless. That I couldn't see something in it that was of greater, what's the word I want there? Greater connection. Again. That, I think, ultimately for me.
I could sum the things that you set up in the word acceptance when you were talking about love and connection, that, you know, primarily that creates this experience we have of acceptance. And if you were feeling connected and loved unconditionally by God, that would create a sense of acceptance, that I am acceptable. And then we can pull that inside to know that we are self-acceptable. Maybe a great way of going about making decisions of how we're doing is whether or not we are feeling acceptable. And the moment we step out of feeling acceptable, we could examine, why am I feeling unacceptable right now? Am I judging myself?
Right.
Do I think source is not accepting me right now, which is impossible from my construct?
Isn't it?
Right, same.
Yeah, me too.
Or
Me
are others feeling, do I feel unacceptable to others? Have I stepped out of my responsibilities or upset someone in some way?
Which is interesting because it always comes back to, it always has to come back to, I find myself unacceptable for some reason, because if I'm putting it on you, it's just my way of delaying, it's my way of delaying seeing it just so I can feel comfortable enough with whatever I'm feeling to get back to me and go, oh, okay.
I was involved with a series of really deep emotional upheaval in some seminars, that just going in, just stripping everything down to the bone, just getting all your guts out, seeing what's working, what's not, what darkness you're carrying, what little bit of light you want to lean toward, all this stuff. Some pretty arduous work, and this gal that was teaching it taught us a lot about Kriya Yoga and meditation and ways to really interiorize, and she postulated that instead of thinking of things as right or wrong, right, which there's usually a bit of shame that comes in if we're labeling something as wrong, she encouraged that we consider running it through the hopper and like this, was that my highest choice? And if we can be sort of doing the same thing, but without putting the kryptonite of shame on us, the toxicity of shame on us, by calling it bad or wrong or whatever. Was that my highest choice? No. Is there a kind and compassionate, inspired way to look at that and see that, well, maybe next time I can do it better? And this is where some wisdom, some applied wisdom can come in, and we end up feeling better. But time and like the struggle and the suffering and like the downtrodden, is this a program from grandma, or is this like my Christian schooling, or is this, a coach, or is this a counselor or girlfriend or whoever? What if it's just me getting to a place where I'm having a relationship with myself, and as long as I'm not going against myself, or when I do, I can look at it the way I would with a young child that's learning something that's difficult. It doesn't do any good to yell and scream when they're trying their best and they make some mistakes. It's just, can we be compassionate and encouraging with ourselves the way we are with little ones that we would fight a bear for? And for me, that's a big, big shift. And a lot of the things that you're talking about, sort of segueing, a lot of the things that you experience with something outside of yourself, or that's, forgive me if I'm off on that, but the idea of your conversation with God. And, I experience a lot of what you experience, but I'm having it all sort of contained in the wonderment of, wow, I get to be here. you know, like the space, trying to contemplate the space between stars, and that's where God is for me. It's just like in the great mystery of the cosmos, and holy crap, I get to be here. I get to I get to smell and taste and feel and love and create whatever I care to, and it really has to do with the quality of my choices. Mm-hmm. And so, anyway, I think it's cool that we have such a parallel experience, but we just have such a different idea of what's feeding those fires, and it doesn't really matter because we're all just about our own experience. You're a lovely person to be around, and I think you've got a lot of balance in your life. Likewise with you, Jeff. And so back to the question of why we're here. Is that what we're talking about tonight?
Still kicking it.
But that answers the original question we were talking about, which is your spark experiences all of this from the filter of this vessel. My spark experiences it through the filter of my vessel, his spark through his vessel. And the beautiful thing is that we come to the same general experiences from very different places. And the joy of that is in what brings you satisfaction may not bring me satisfaction. So I can listen to you all day and talk about how beautiful the leaves on the trees are, and that's amazing. And I can go, gosh, I really wish I had that, but that's not what I see. I see the beauty of it, but I may not have the satisfaction of that as I may have the satisfaction of something else.
Yeah.
Whatever. I didn't have another example. I was just riffing on that. But the idea that even to the idea of your Jeff wanting to have this thing happening, to me speaks to the same thing. Is we're bringing this spark to this conversation, and while we may be using different language, we seem to come to the same resolutions or to the same source, to the same pool in the end. We just may be at different ends of the pool or different sides of the pool, but it's the same frickin' pool. And isn't it amazing that we get to do that? I mean, I think that's, how could there not be a more gratifying feeling than the level of satisfaction that creates in each individual who's living that truth, who's living that reality for themselves. And the challenge with that is it's tough to get to if you're mired in the constructs of what this world has trained you into. Because I don't think any of us could get to that pool if we stayed stuck in the constructs of what we were trained into.
Yeah.
There was something inside of us pulling. There's something inside of us desiring more, and I think that's what I call the spark. It wasn't happenstance that drove that. It was a very, I mean, I look back at my life from as early as I can remember, and that thing has been there my whole life. And at every juncture, at every turn, some choose to go to that to answer their questions, and others go, that doesn't work, I have to focus here. I think for me it was about staying here and letting that drive wherever it drove, and letting that be the thing that moved my life forward.
I can only assume that was the way you were too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and myself included.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time, how'd you figure that out? I mean, people weren't teaching you. How did you figure that out? I'm not really sure. I knew there was gonna be a better, if I just kept myself open, I was gonna be drawn to a better way of doing it. And I don't know where that X factor comes from, and I wonder what percentage of the population you guys think are tuned into that part of themselves and listening to that part of themselves.
3.2.
That's probably about right.
I think that's where it goes from the one to the many. Is that once you go there and you really go there,
the 100th monkey.
You can't help but want others to go there, and it's a weird balancing act because you have to be willing to let people be where they are and be available to the people who are ready to that experience.
And to what degree do we sort of, as I've said before, I pride myself in having boundless energy and comforting the afflicted, right? But there's a point where I run out of patience with that, and I really, I really enjoy afflicting the comforted. It's an interesting little dance in that brackish water there. At what point do we just lay out some very soft things, and have you guys found it useful to be pretty freaking right? Direct, and the carrot's not working anymore. This person's going to miss the entire freaking boat unless there's a little bit of a greater push. How often do you guys rely on something besides a carrot? Or is it always a carrot, just in various forms?
I don't understand the question.
When you're trying to inspire, when you are inspiring someone to get out of the malaise of the program, of the matrix, of the downtrodden, this thing happening, and it's obviously an addictive cycle of survival. And how often do you guys get a little antsy, not antsy, but a little more forceful in your delivery to get people's attention? I don't know. I've had a lot of luck saying things that might be a little more curt than how I would normally say them when it's getting down to the wire, and I'm running out of patience, and sometimes...
Clarify getting down to the wire.
Yeah.
There's a lot of metaphors that I'm not following, so
that's fine.
I'm trying to get to...
So I'm speaking directly to our therapeutic endeavors.
Yes.
And when you have a client that's maybe working diligently to pretend not to know something, like they're wanting your insight, they're wanting your help, but they're really in their quagmire of their own stuff, and they're recycling their stuff. At what point are you, you're leading all along, but do you find yourself getting a little frustrated, not frustrated?
No, you meant frustrated. You've used that word numerous times,
okay.
So stay with it.
Yeah.
It's caused a frustration for you, so use the word.
Do my best not to linger too much on that feeling, but
right.
It's a good source. It's a good catalyst to get me to take some action that when people just kind of look at me, maybe a little shocked, just kind of get them out of their fog for a moment, and then
Aren't they just saying this way isn't working for me?
What's that?
Aren't they just telling you this isn't working for me?
Yeah.
And the challenge is for you to come up with a different way to deliver the message or create the experience.
And I guess thank you for that, because what do you guys do when they've come to you, they're interested in that, they've expressed this, but you're in a space where you've held the mirror, helped them understand what they could be doing, and they shut that down and they maintain the status quo.
Honestly, you want an answer?
Yeah.
An honest answer?
Yeah.
The inner world reflects the outer world. So if you encounter that with any consistency, it's you attempting to tell yourself
it's not consistent. Yeah.
That there's something there. Because the reason I kept asking you was I'm like, where's he going with this? I don't follow, because I don't think that way. So if someone comes to me, there's already a level of desire born in them.
Yeah.
It's not up to me to decide what level that desire expresses. It's my desire to show up and help them get where they need to go.
Indeed.
Not what I need to do, not where I need them to go.
Yep.
So there's never frustration, because I can always see the incremental movement. And for them, it may be that they've moved what looks like an inch to me is 500 miles for them. So there's never a frustration, because in the moment of it, it's very easy when you're talking to someone, if they're not getting it or they're not wanting to hear it, to call it out for what it is and say, and I've actually said this to clients, and I'd say, look, we've done this dance like 6 times now. You're telling the same story. You keep repeating the same story.
Yeah.
Why are you invested in that story?
Yeah.
And pursuing it that direction. And if they still don't go there, the chances are good they're not going to come back.
Right.
Because I've now gone across the threshold of their ability to...
Right. And that answers my question. That I don't think I worded it very well. And in fact...
That's what I was trying
Yeah. And maybe I unconsciously was curious about, like, I think we probably all have great success in our professional lives, but how well does that translate into the interpersonal life of our families? And that has a little bit to do with why we're here. Because I mean, we're part of someone's idea of let's procreate and keep this thing going. Do you find the same tactics work within your family?
I don't. For me, it was that arena was. I believe. I chose that arena to set me up for where I've gone in my life.
Gotcha.
Whether or not they choose to go with me, or whether they even give a shit about what it is, doesn't matter.
No.
I love them for who they are, and it's interesting that you asked that question too, because my next youngest brother, his personality type is he's the one that went into the Southern Baptist Church and fell in love and stayed there for a lot of years and tried to get me enrolled, and everybody he knew enrolled.
Enrolled, that's awesome.
But that was when he was a lot younger. But interestingly enough, he finds these things that he can kind of dive into, and now he's political. And like overnight, he starts spouting political nonsense, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And I tried to push into it a couple times, and he was very about his viewpoint. Well, okay. So I don't put energy there.
Indeed. Yeah.
Because it's not going to do anything other than torment me or frustrate me, and there's no point in that.
Gosh, that's a lot of noise, isn't it?
Ugh, ton of noise.
We've
been talking a lot, mister. Where'd you go? Hello over there.
How is helping others? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
As to why we're here, is to help others. So we were tapping into that a little earlier with regard to the balance between self and others. And for me, I probably lean more toward others and less toward self, to a fault. And then we'll do a snap back or like a slingshot sort of thing, where I find myself giving and committing to and helping and doing more outside than I am doing for inside. So then I'll like make a rapid shift over and go do something selfish or do something reactionary and tell myself I've got it back in balance again. So I wouldn't recommend that strategy.
I was about to ask you, how's that working for you?
I
love your honesty on that one. That's beautiful.
I so don't ascribe to that philosophy. Well, and I don't mean the particular of that, the philosophy or the idea that we're here to do anything for anybody else. Because if you can't find it here, you have nothing to give anybody else. And it isn't about all of us moving in some form or fashion. But it is not my responsibility ever in this lifetime to fix you or make you feel better or make you healthy or make you healed or anything else. It's right here. This is where it's at. This is home. This is why I'm here. This is who, I didn't come here as you. I didn't come here as 3 of me. I came here as one. And that one has an infinite amount of power within that spark to affect and to influence and to provide, as we were talking about earlier, universal mind, the energy to provide a frequency which can draw people to want to find that frequency, to want to, look at, whatever. I don't, it's one of those things that just gets me going like, I had this conversation when I was in training for hybrid living. Michael, Dr. Cotton, talked about, it was like, it seemed like every other time he was talking in front of the group, it was about saving the world, and it was about we're here to impact this world and change the things in the world, and the world needs us, and the world needs our energy, and the world needs that. And I would sit there and go, "What the fuck is he talking about?" Because I was like, I don't get that. I don't get this world thing. Like, there's 7.5 billion people on the planet. They're busy worrying about their own stuff. Why do I need to be worrying about their stuff? But I don't mean that. I don't mean that like not connected. Again, it's not an unconnected space. To me, well, I actually stood up in that training and said, "Your words are lovely, but I don't get it. Makes no sense to me. This heal the world thing. Like, what is that going to accomplish? And how is that going to get accomplished? So, if I'm going to heal the world, I'm going to ignore myself. How does that work?"
But if you are in a high frequency of healing within yourself,
Right.
and you've got access to universal intelligence that
Yes.
most of the planet's not, there is eventually, if there's enough of you, there's going to be a cascade. There's going to be a tipping point.
Absolutely.
Okay. And could it have been?
But how can you get to that frequency without all of the attention being on your own energy?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's all. I find it's hard to talk about because it's such a, pardon me, but back to the things that are a load of bullshit. It's one of those constructs in spirituality that drives me nuts.
Just to
You can put all your
out
attention
to-
out
yeah,
there. Let's
yeah,
put
yeah.
all my attention over there because
Yeah.
they need healing.
Yeah.
No, what you're seeing is you need healing, because if all you can see is people who need healing, then you haven't done your work. Because your job is not to heal them, your job is to heal you.
Indeed, but it's funny that we all make a living. From the untrained eye, it would look like we're all making a living healing others. But I get your point. We got to take care of ourselves. We got to be advocates for ourselves.
Well, yeah, but you have nothing to bring to the table if you haven't done your work.
Why are we assuming that people haven't done their work?
No. You have nothing to offer if you haven't done your work. You're not healing shit. You're not doing anything. You're doing.
I
your
subscribe
thing.
to that. That's duly noted. Yeah.
I mean the same for me. I don't mean to be like you.
I didn't take it as such.
Any of the above. It's one of those things that it gives people an excuse not to pay attention to what's going on right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to find the alignment that creates the frequency, that creates the ability to then enroll and bring, or if you want to call it enroll, but it's still a method of connection.
And that's an area where I feel like a lot of religious institutions have missed the boat, is they haven't taught people how to do that, how to really take care of this vessel. And, that could be a very interesting conversation sometime, to have some inquiry into some stellar practices with Buddhism or meditation and things like that. But as far as why we're here, what I've learned about why I'm here is to bring the lessons that I've learned through the trials and tribulations that I've gone through, that up-levels my frequency to be able to hold space for other people that are also going through. So a big part of why I'm here is because I feel like there's people that need me, and I get a lot of satisfaction being a vessel, a conduit that holds space for people. Like I was telling this guy today, he was just tripping out. He's a famous guitar guy that you've heard of that is going on tour soon. And he hadn't taken care of himself in a long time. Just had a couple twins. He's just been going and going and going. And I was doing some bioenergetic work on him, and he was just undulating and just beaming with light, and he was trying to thank me, and I'm just like, look, man, I'm just your Sherpa carrying a couple, I know the trail a little bit. I'm just carrying a couple packs for you, but this is you. This is all within you. And I think for me, a big part of why I'm here is to help reflect back the power, the divine essence of your beingness. Just being a clear reflection for that for other people is why I feel like I'm here. And the more I get out of my own way and just do that for people, unbelievable things are going on in my satisfaction life.
Amen, bro.
So,
Amen.
yeah. Can you relate to that?
Amen. 100%. It's a more peaceful way of saying what I was saying. A less agitated way of saying what
Let's do the yoga.
It's just one of those. It's one of those things that the paradigm and the illusions of the things that we create that supposed to make things look better or feel better or whatever. But the way you expressed it is to me exactly what it's about. If I can't do anything to fix you, I can hold the space for you to fix yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I may be really good at being able to see how you're screwing that up,
Right.
and I'm happy to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to share it with you. But that's the cool thing is that because it's their energy, and I'm simply talking about their energy, there's no fight. There's no. I mean, there may be sometimes, but I mean, largely they kind of go, oh, because I'm talking about their energy. I'm not talking about my interaction in their energy. It's their energy space, and it's like when that's reflected to them, when they experience their own energy for the first time.
It's a lot of responsibility.
In a way that they've never done it before.
Exactly.
They're like, oh my God, that's actually me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, bingo.
Yeah.
Well on the road. But then that's what the analogy I used before. Some people go 5 inches and think they've gone 500 miles, and you got to be willing to let them have that. Because, I mean, I've watched a lot of clients that did well through the program and reached the point that they thought they could reach. Right. And we're satisfied with that. And that may look like, I have the relationship I want now. And I'm a little happier at work, and that's as far as they could get in their own consciousness about what would be satisfying. Until they've lived that, then they can go to the next place and expand that viewpoint. But until they go there, they can't. They have no. For many, it's too big a jump to go from being, miserable under a rock to bliss.
Yeah.
There's a few steps in between. I think for some it doesn't require that many steps, but for many it does.
And another huge caveat that I've grabbed about this ride is I was brought up in a very judgmental society, culture, however you want to deem it, and didn't even know I was judging. Just thought I was discerning. I thought I was just being, sharp in what I was able to notice and labeling. And I just wrote quite a bit about this in the last couple of days. But I think any chance that I can move from any sort of judgment into simple curiosity is a big piece of why I'm here. Is just turn it all into wonderment. Just be perpetually on psilocybin mushrooms. Okay. You're like, I know what psilocybin is. You don't tell me what psilocybin is. But just having that wonderment, like removing the obstacles of the enticing pieces of looking through a fragmented lens on how this thing can go. Just finding joy and light, and there's plenty of negative things to focus on. But just for me, why I'm here is to evolve and to be peaceful and happy in this experience. And I find that I do that so much better when I'm looking for the plus signs in life, when I'm just looking for that little silver lining, that little bit of sunshine coming through, that little bit of where there could be a comment to get someone's attention, if I can get them laughing, if I can get them trusting, if I can use compassion, if I can use inspiration, all the fruits of the Spirit, honestly, if we could just find a way to sort of anoint ourselves with those and move forward in a really kind, loving way, that's when things start making sense to me in this life. And it's a pretty mixed up space out there for a lot of people, and I'm glad that we get to do what we do to help some people out. But what about you, Sensei? What do you?
There's a woman that I've been working with for a while that, despite having the resources to do really anything she wants to do and the time to do it, has not really produced anything of an academic or an occupation. She has attended to her family and done well with that, and brought in this notion recently of some people on the planet primarily being here to truly do nothing but just be who they are and be around people and operating in the frequency that they came here to operate in, with truly no Western purpose. Or not even a Western purpose, but just not producing anything.
Yeah.
That they're
Right.
just here to love, just show up and love. And she has finally been able to receive that, and trying to hold on to it, to keep it in the midst of everyone around her saying, well, who are you and what do you do? Well, I just show up in love, because that doesn't go anywhere with standing in line at Costco or talking to your tax person or whatever.
Right.
It just isn't going anywhere. So I bet if she's had that experience, there may be people listening to our rift here and saying, well, I don't resonate with what Jeff said or what Jim said or Timothy said. I don't do anything, and that bothers me. And it's like, well, for that person or those people that are listening, don't let it bother you. There apparently are people on the planet that are here really to just be. And they will be taken care of. There will be food come their way. There will be a roof over their head. And whether that's a trust fund situation or a loving spouse or aging parents or however that comes down, that's okay. That you actually don't really have to do anything for some people. And that would drive me nuts personally.
Gosh. Yeah.
That would be very difficult, which probably means I get to do that maybe in the next life. Or, I don't know, maybe I did do that already. I don't know. Right. But it isn't about production or accomplishment. That oftentimes just leads to okay, I got there, now what? And,
Next.
An empty drive. Yeah. And then there's another group of people that this is a fun one to try to talk about. So in any type of a sitcom or a movie, there are generally the light people and the dark people. And I'm not talking about skin color. I'm talking about the roles that they play, right? It's the
denseness of
the contrast. There needs to be some contrast. Yeah. And those people exist too. They come here specifically to be the villains, specifically to be the contrast. And they're serving a purpose, a very, very valuable purpose in being the contrarians, being the roughnecks, the whatever, that we get to love, or get to try to love, or get to try to accept, or try to understand. Because if they weren't that way, I mean, really, how hard is it to love somebody that loves you? That there's nothing to learn from that, or very little to learn from that. So for the folks that feel misunderstood, unloved, unappreciated, or whatever, thank you. Thank you for being here, that we could have people that feel like misfits, or just the round pegs in the square hole. Thank you for being brave enough to come and to play that role for us. And I probably show up that way right now for somebody, as the round peg in the square hole, and that's fine. If I can love you, you can love me, and we'll talk about it in the clouds someday, maybe. But that, for me, fills in, because we're talking, we've had similar, but a little bit different, but we kind of come from the same place, and it would be very, very different than if we were talking to some Aborigine, and some other person coming from a very, very different place.
Sure.
But those are the folks that I'm running to in my practice, that just like, hey man, I'm a misfit. I just do not fit in, like, anywhere. My friends don't get me. My family doesn't get me. I'm bouncing around, accomplishing nothing, apparently, to them, by the standard measures and all of that. But they're filling a purpose. They're here playing a role in the big machine, in the big cog, or the big family. Any thoughts about those possibilities?
Different facets.
Yeah. On an academic level, I can understand how there may be this need for people that are just sort of taking up space, and I'm cool with people that are just here to love, and just the people that are just smiling their toothless smile in the little hut, and they're just like, they're sweeping their little dirt floor, and like, I think our society, our what'd you call it, the Western, whatever you said. I think that we can learn a lot from that. That seems very different than just someone that's just here and sort of just taking up space. It reminds me when I was a kid and I was learning to water ski, and we were kind of broke and we had a lot of kids and not a lot of gas. And so, if you learn how to water ski, it was, in my mind, it's like, okay, you can stand up behind the boat. And if you're just going for 30 minutes, you're killing it. Like, go try something new. Get outside of the wake a little. Like, just do a little bit of something different. And not everybody wanted to do that. And to me, that kind of sounds like this. Like, there's some people that are just kind of just taking up space, and they're just here, and they're going to be provided for, and all that kind of stuff. That is something I am working on having more acceptance and compassion toward, because that seems a little frustrating for me, because it seems that just seems like it's phoning it in. And there's a lot of people that are leaving the planet that have so much energy and would want to change and see and do and inquire, and just to kind of just stay behind the boat the whole ride, this 1 in 400 trillion chance, and that is the actual statistical probability that we get to be here, staying behind the boat the whole time. That just drives me nuts. So I can learn, I can in my best self, when I'm in Shavasana, I can love all of that. But if that person's my friend, which is probably unlikely, but if somehow I got into a stuck elevator situation with that person, I might be inclined to just see if there's any way I can just
Ghost.
That's awesome. That's interesting. I would feel inclined to see what I could do to be ultra creative and inspire that person into their next echelon of their existence. So
what I failed to explain,
yes, sir,
was that they're actually operating on a higher frequency than the rest of us.
Ooh.
And it's simply by them being here in a certain number, that they're increasing our vibration. I kind of forgot to say that part.
Nice. Okay. Huh.
Yeah, that there's a bunch of people here doing it.
Back to the original question, which is, the why are we here? I don't think there is a universal answer.
There isn't.
Yeah.
I think that it's all individual. The
Yeah.
cool thing is that each of us is walking whatever that is. I love the idea that you would want to inspire someone to decide they don't want to ride behind the boat. But maybe for that individual, that is such an extraordinary accomplishment for their experience that it comes back to honoring. If we can't honor ourselves, we won't honor others. And if we don't honor the truth of our own process, we can't honor the process of others.
Sure.
So judgment comes when we compare or contrast ourselves to another person's experience that we don't know, don't comprehend, and don't understand, and have no business being involved in, right? From my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So judgment then begins to cloud the perception and shuts down the receptors of all the things that you were talking about, because it's now become an ego process of, you need to be different for me to be happy. You need to be
Sure.
different because I'm happy.
I get that.
And if I'm happy, what I'm doing and what I'm doing should make you happy.
Yeah.
I was having this conversation with a friend the other night. Just like he tapped into this whole construct of realizing that it was so important for him to engage people in a way that they would care as much as he cares.
Right.
And that was his investment. Was I need to know that you care. He would create partnerships with people, and then when they wouldn't show up in the way he expected, he was like, "Why don't you care about this as much as I do?" What the hell does that have to do with anything? It's like, you don't have to care. It's yours. You started it. You created it.
Yeah. And I think my whole analogy about being behind the boat, those people that I'm talking about wanting to inspire are people who have expressed not being happy, but they remain behind the boat. I'm not talking about people that are just minding their own. I'm telling you, in my travels and seeing impoverished people that are just smiling and they're just with their families. They got a can of beans to eat that day, and they're just freaking ecstatic. Love it. Absolutely love it. I think I failed to mention that I'm speaking more to people that are just kind of have an undercurrent of disharmony about their life, and they're just phoning it in behind the boat, and that's what they're bringing to me, and they want me to help them understand something. Oftentimes, if people are minding their own and they seem to be, it's hard. And maybe this is right here. Maybe this is the judgment. But it's hard for me to understand how people aren't interested in contributing, like just from a survival standpoint, from a biological, from a DNA standpoint, just a contribution to the tribe, just seeing if there's anything that could be a little bit of an up level in how the last 30 years have gone. That's all been just about steady as she goes, status quo. But
Is that a reference to heal the world again? Is that where that goes? Is that what that means?
which
Whatever
means,
you were just saying, level up, and that might be where the judgment is. Is that?
what do you got against healing the world? Because I've experienced this on a handful of times.
It gives you a sense. If it gives you a sense of purpose, that's awesome. I have nothing against it. I just don't get it. I don't get it in that way. I don't see the world.
I get your concern about people wanting to heal the world when they haven't healed themselves. But if I'm in a really good space and I'm seeing people that are just absolutely phoning it in and just droning life, that seems like I don't know.
Why do you even pay attention to it? That's what I don't. That's where I don't understand, is that if you are truly in that space does not hold judgment. There is no judgment. In order to assess that, you have to judge it. You have to assume that your position is better than their
Why are
position.
you getting so feisty?
He's passionate. That's
I'm passionate.
That's passion.
Yeah.
He loves
But-
you.
Yeah, I mean, it's there has to be judgment. There has to be an assessment that says that's better and that's worse. But from my perspective, when you come to that space, there is none of that. There is no assessment of whether your space is better than mine or my space is better than yours. It simply is they're doing what they're doing, and if our paths interact, if our paths come together, and there is a desire, there's times that I come across people all the time who want to rail against everything, and you can be there and you can offer energy and you can offer something, and they're not taken.
Yeah.
So I stopped giving them energy.
Me too.
Other than holding space for the fact that they're wonderful and perfect the way they are, and enjoy your life, and please take that life somewhere not near me, because.
But that would be a judgment, wouldn't it? Please.
No, that's called boundaries. That's called
Okay.
that energy interacting in
But
my
not-
energy doesn't
yeah.
feel good,
I
and
guess
I don't choose that because
I think we're talking about sort of the
probably
same things.
because there are people who could be in the space that you described, but could have a very compatible energy because I'm looking for something to clarify, understand, or evolve in my own experience that energy is serving as much as my energy is serving them.
Right.
So, but it's still.
I've had great.
In order to heal the world, this is what gets me. In order to heal the world, you have to have the judgment that the world's not right. And if you have the viewpoint that the world's not right, then you're not right. Because you can't see the world as fucked up if you don't feel fucked up. You can't go there from here. If you are truly in the space of the word you used a minute ago, smoddy or whatever, you don't see that. That's not. You can observe it. You can observe that people choose suffering. You can observe that people choose to do things that don't serve them. But you see the world is broken. You are not in that space.
I agree.
So to believe
I don't think I could do what I do if I thought the world was broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you got to heal the world, to me, you're barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
There's nothing to heal. No, the world doesn't need healing.
But it's a blast to help people who come to us.
That is absolutely fabulous.
It's a blast.
I agree.
That's about as good as it gets, and I'm grateful that we understand that. And all the different directions we could have gone with our lives, I think it's beautiful that we get to hold space. It's a true honor, And thanks for holding space for me. Really, really appreciate that. And thanks for putting this together, and feels like we've done a pretty good job of kicking this one around tonight.
It's interesting where it goes.
Yeah.
That metaphor you were using about the water skiing thing started out with an idea of limited resources, and the limited resources were poor. And then you stepped into, we didn't have much gas. And then you stepped into, and they were taking up time.
Yeah.
Right? So there was a limit of money, gas, and time.
Nice.
And of course, the universe doesn't work that way. There's no
it's limitless,
limit, right? So if that person wanted to water ski behind the boat for their entire lifetime, there's infinite lifetimes, and there's infinite gas and infinite time.
Yeah.
So that you wouldn't be attached to that.
That's good. That's helpful. Huh.
But we're trained to think of limited resources,
True.
right?
Yeah.
Eat all your food.
Scarcity. Yeah.
Eat all your food.
Yeah.
Some starving kid somewhere that wants that. And it's like, really? How do you know? Shut up. Eat your food.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, fun conversation tonight.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a hoot.
I liked one of Jim's conclusions when I was pushing that there are people here on the planet that are just vibrating faster, and that's their job. And then there's the contrarian or the villain that shows up, the perpetrator, if you will, all these roles that we're playing. If you think of like a big Broadway production, you got the leading character, and you got the guy who wrote the story, and the lights person, and the person selling the tickets, you know, and all these different roles that each, and, you know, it takes all the roles to pull it off.
Yeah.
And so when we ask a question like, where do we come from, why are we here, where are we going, the why are we here part, well, it depends on what role you're playing.
Huh.
Maybe that would be a good way to, you know, try to chew on this a little bit more when we meet next time.
I like that. Yeah.
Because I think we have similar roles, and so our answer would be coming from that set of filters as what we understand our role to be. But what I really am trying to do is let's try to pretend we're in these other roles, or what could some of the other roles be, and because that's who's going to possibly be listening. We don't have much to offer. I don't have much to offer for someone who's just like me, because they're already thinking just like me. They're already probably just where I am. So it's other people that would perhaps hear this that might go, oh, I haven't heard that before. Well, that's interesting. And we were trying to make this last week relevant, informative, and somewhat entertaining to get people to listen. So, yeah, let's push ourselves to think outside the box of our experience and come up with some, what would it be like to be trying to answer this question from an entirely different set of rules or perspectives or understanding. That's where it gets juicy for me.
And we are.
Yeah.
We already are.
Yeah.
And it's evidenced in language choices. It's evidenced in the expression of concepts and how they're expressed. That Timothy can express a concept that I have to ask questions about, even though we're talking about basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That we have dialogue to clarify, and that he said some things that resonated in a way that the language he chose entered my system in a way that it hadn't entered before because of the language that he chose. And that's the role that took place. And it triggered in me that passion to want to understand that feeling inside of me whenever that topic comes up, because I know I'm not crazy and I know I'm not an asshole. So I'm like, I don't get it. What, you know? And so his choice of language was a way to enter my consciousness in a different way, as is your language, and I think that's already taking place because we all come from such vastly different backgrounds.
Right.
So we've already been through all those roles. I worked a sandwich bar. I was a waiter, and I was a car washer.
Let's do that real quick, just for shites and giggles. Go through your whole, all your jobs, just real quick. Just for
next time.
There's that many?
Yeah.
Wow.
That many? Oh God, I have done some pretty amazing things in my life.
I bet.
Actually.
Yeah.
My first. I don't know.
Okay. All right.
We can take a
We
look.
can save it for another time.
Something I've been wanting to do tonight is, we were talking earlier about knowing from an academic, intellectual left brain experience or way of understanding, and then the right brain experiential side. And I was wondering if each of us could try with a few words or more to express your experience of doing what we've done tonight, and to see how each of our experiences are similar yet different doing the same thing, what would appear to be the same thing.
Can you ask that another way?
How would you describe your experience tonight?
In what context?
What was it like to be here? Like, why are we here? What was that experience like?
Why are we here discussing why are we here?
Exactly. What's that experience like?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, it happens after the fact. I'm aware of it after the fact, but I have consistently experienced this. For me, is a tremendous playground where I get to open my energy as much as I can, and to tap into that universal experience as deeply as I can, which is inordinately satisfying for me. When I leave the experience, it's gratifying, it's expansive, and it's deeply touching, because I get to then sit back and go, wow, it's like going to the gym, but a very different kind of gym, where I get to exercise that in a very powerful way, and really get to dive as deeply as I want to. And that is probably, honestly, one of the most satisfying things I could ever want, because
Wow.
it touches so many different things in myself.
So you'll be here next week, huh?
Maybe. Good. I mean, good. Good, and I mean positively and negatively. And I shouldn't say negatively, because none of it's negative, but I mean, like
Challenge.
the reaching for that thing that stimulates that passion and going, oh, it's there, and feeling comfortable and open enough to go, let it rip. Let that passion come out, and let it find its voice, because it hasn't had that place. So, and deep appreciation that both of you are able to handle my intensity, because I know how my energy is, and I appreciate that. You can just sort of sit back and take a breath and go, okay. Because I am very conscious of the level of energy and intensity that I carry, so it's not something that it doesn't come as a shock to me. I just have to be, there are very few venues that I can let that open in a way that feels, because we don't get to go deep like this very often in very many places.
I agree.
So.
And on the heels of that, I guess for me, being a fish out of water most of my life, with growing up in the South and having a lot of sensitivity and a lot of intuition, and trying to share those things with people that just absolutely didn't, just completely shut down. Very threatened, feeling very uncomfortable by the things that I was noticing about life and my experience, and just what we're doing here feels very natural to me. I think this is what a lot of the tribes were doing for a long time before industrialization happened. I think there were fires and conversation and elders getting together. This feels like an elders meeting. It feels like a wisdom council of, and I'm not saying we got all the answers, but I think that with the fact that we're seeking what we're seeking puts us in that category. It's not that we have it, but that we seek it. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's extraordinarily refreshing, and it feels right at home. And the more we do this, the better it feels for me. And I like challenging the perimeters of my consciousness, and you help me with that. I have a lot of respect for how you see the world, and there's times where it seems like there's this all this energy that we just kind of abuts, and then we talk about it. It's like, oh, all right, okay, and then it starts to fragment. It's like, oh yeah, I could, and then but it makes me think of this being a microcosm of the rest of the world, because we have so much in common, and no wonder, because I can feel you get a little heated. I can feel like a little bit of times when I'm maybe wanting to kind of get back with a little bit of something, a little more curt than I would normally do it. But that exponentially outward to the rest of the world, people who haven't had the luxury of getting to know themselves and working through some of and naming and taming some of their dragons, that little bit of whatever we felt can lead to war with people who don't have a gentleman's code or don't have. Does that make sense to you?
I think so.
That little bit of demonstrative, like people who haven't really had opportunities to refine that down, all they know is dominance and oppression, and like you just keep getting bigger to win,
To
dominate, and it's just really cool to have gentlemen with. I think you guys have beautiful minds, and maybe I don't quite understand, but just being able to have a robust exchange of ideas is really good for my soul. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of places on the planet where I can do that. And I often find myself craving this level of exchange, and it's a difficult thing to find at most places that people are congregating in our society. So I'm super grateful. And so what this has been for me is another level and another it's like on my map of my life experience, it's another really fine what am I trying to say, a pin on my map of a new place that I got to discover, and I'm excited and seeing what else we can map.
Nice, very nice. Yeah, my experience of the time that we've spent together has been really warm and engaging, intellectually stimulating, loving. The style of counseling that I do, I'm a pretty open therapist. I'm very transparent, share a lot of personal anecdotes. So this venue is similar to what I might experience with people I've been working with for a while, but I don't have to be the professional here. This can just be amongst friends. And you said there's not very many places in your life where you can do what we're doing here. For me right now in my life, this is the only place that I can do that.
Yeah.
And so it's a very sacred, special experience. And I value it tremendously, and look forward to more.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, and I'm glad that we can do that in a place that's very near and dear to me, and I'm happy to host and continue doing it the way we've been doing it. I'm open to any other iterations, but it's nice having you guys here. It up levels this energy of this home, and I hope we stay at it for a while. Righto.
Are we up for wrapping it for tonight?
Yeah. Good night, lovely people. Thanks for your patience and understanding and all that we've been moving through. Was there just a moment when you thought it might have died?
When?